Good evening and welcome to the Get Football Mercato show. Here every weekday to bring you the latest transfer news from across France, Germany and Italy. I'm your host Nathan Staples, and joining me this evening are Axel Falk from Get German Football News, Rich Allen from Get French Football News, a French journalist Robin Berner, and we've got a few other guests joining us a little bit later on. It's a bit of a rushed episode this Friday, but we will mill through it just like everyone else is during this transfer window. We start in France, and news that will please the ears of Leicester City fans as they may be closing in on their replacement for Riyad Mahrez, with contract provisionally at least with Rashid Ghazal reportedly to have been agreed. Robin, it's maybe not quite the blockbuster signing that they were maybe hoping to replace Mahrez with, but at the same time, a solid addition to the Premier League side.
Well, I'm not sure solid is a word I'd use to describe Rashid Ghazal. He's obviously played at a couple of really big French clubs. He started out at Lyon and moved to Monaco last year. But he's one of these guys who's very hot and cold, to be honest. He can be absolutely excellent at times, but equally he's a player who can just disappear from matches and be completely ineffective. He didn't really have a great deal of influence on Monaco's season last year, and you know, if I was a Leicester fan and he was replacing Mahrez, I don't think I'd be particularly optimistic about his prospects of replicating their record sale.
It's an interesting move, really, Rich. We had talked to Jez about it last night as well. It seems like, given that Leicester have signed a couple of players from France previously, but more from Ligue 2, is he someone that could really, with the expertise he's got, place Mahrez? I mean, he's been sort of a backup for the last 2 years. Maybe the regular first team football might give him a bit of a boost.
Well, we did see when he came into the Monaco team, the Lyon team at the end of the 2016-17 season, I think it was. He actually was really pretty consistent and really quite impressive. But as you say, he struggled in Monaco last year. wasn't regular, and he did disappear far too quickly from many matches.
Rich, what do you think to the move? Is it something that Leicester City's fans should be excited about, or maybe a bit more worried about?
I think it's cautious optimism. I think if Claude Puel can get his arm around Rashid Ghazal, can make him feel that, you know, he is perhaps a little bit of a star of the team, sort of play along to his ego slightly, but not massaging it to ridiculous levels, then we know he's got it in him. We've seen it at Lyon, we've seen it fleetingly at Monaco. We know he's got the ability. What he doesn't seem to have is the mindset that can keep that going week in, week out. Now, maybe consistent football has a part to play with that. He never seemed to really nail down a spot where he felt perhaps his most secure at Lyon, and certainly never happened at Monaco. So maybe if he can come into this Leicester team and he's playing week in, week out, you know, he's got the spotlight of it being the Premier League. He's got, you know, a French manager who can sort of nurture him and keep him focused, keep him on track. Then yeah, maybe they can get the best out of him. I'm going to be very, very intrigued to see what happens with this move, because it's probably the last opportunity he's got. He's 26 now. 10 to 15 million, the fee being touted. I think that's probably very good business, more from Monaco's perspective, considering they signed him on a free. So we'll see. I mean, you know, I don't want to write him off just yet, but I think he's got perhaps a lot of certainly French journalists are going to be a little bit more sceptical, I think, than maybe than maybe a lot of journalists this side of the water. So we'll see. I hope it works out for him, because, you know, as I say, on his day, he's a joy to watch.
It's very boom or bust, doesn't it? The feel of that transfer. We'll see if it does pay off for the Foxes in the long run. Should it go through at least? Anyway, on to things in Germany, and it seems like the crazy deal that was happening, Axel, last night, really, that Arturo Vidal looks like he's sort of shifted gears and heading to Barcelona. Information's coming through that he's maybe agreed a 3-year deal till 2021. What's the latest? And what do you think to the move from a Bayern Munich perspective? Is this an ideal scenario to get him off the books completely?
I think it could be. Unless Niko Kovac aims to use him, which I personally think he should have been aiming to. It's better. It's better to not just offload him than to load him out. I think for Vidal, a club like Barcelona might use him quite well as well. So it's a good move for both sides. I think his fees around 30 million, I think, which is good money for Bayern Munich as well, for a 29, 30-year-old midfielder who they basically already replaced in Corentin Tolisso. So I think for Bayern Munich, it's better to sell him than to load him out. And unless they're going to use him, it's a very good way to get some money from him and to get some money to spend on other things. So I think I personally thought he would fit Niko Kovac's system quite well, considering Niko Kovac likes to use like pressing players, and Vidal is like the epitome of pressing. But unless he's going to use him, selling him is a perfect option, and to Barcelona for 30 million is perfect.
And it'll be an interesting one to keep an eye on things. On to Italy now, and we do have a very special guest with us, and it's Claudio Perfetto, Italian journalist. Great to have you on, Claudio. We're going to talk about obviously a number of things in Italy tonight, but I wanted to start with some Napoli news, at least anyway, because I've not heard too much from them this summer, but they're slowly creeping up there with interest in two players, one former Liga 1 player and one current Liga 1 player, in Guillermo Ochoa in goal and Kevin Malcuit right back. What more can you tell us? And are those the right kind of moves for the Napoli team to make to move forward?
Yeah, it's been a quiet summer from aside from signing Carlo Ancelotti. Obviously, that was a major move, but as far as transactions,
You're fading a little bit in and out, Claudio. I think your mic was being a little bit funny. We'll come back to you, Claudio, in a moment. We'll go back to French news, at least anyway. And Robin, some news that's been coming out recently, at least, with Almami Toure. He's been linked with a number of Ligue 1 clubs as well as a couple of other Premier League clubs. But Monaco is sort of in a conundrum at the moment. Do they extend him? Do they let him go? But also with the injury hit Sidibe still on their books and not looking to move on either. What do they do with their right-back situation?
Well, obviously Monaco have made their name by selling players in recent times. And Almami Toure is in a difficult position they're in a difficult position with Almami Toure because he's only got a year left in his contract. Obviously, Sidibe is their starting right back, but Almami Toure has proven himself time and again that he's a very, very capable player for them. And if he was to go, he'd be a difficult player to replace. From his point of view, you can see why he would want to leave. He's perhaps not had the game time that he would wish, or perhaps that he would even deserve. He's proven himself to be a very, very capable player. If I was Monaco, I'd be seeking to keep him because I don't think that they're going to be able to sign a replacement that they can guarantee is going to be as effective as him for the money that they're likely to get for him at this stage. As you say, I believe he's turned down Nice already, and Crystal Palace are said to be interested in it. I think if I was a Crystal Palace fan, I'd be very, very content to see a guy like Toure come into the team. I think he's a very capable player.
Rich, I want your thoughts on this one as well, because like we've said before, Toure's a good right back, has played plenty of football in the last couple of years, although maybe not quite as much as he's hoped, but we've always felt like he may be the sort of successors to Sidibe, even a better option than the French international. Would it be the right move for for Monaco to allow him to go elsewhere?
Well, I think Monaco have positioned themselves that seems to be where they're heading towards. I think you look at players that they've signed the last couple of transfer windows. They've brought in Jordi Gaspar, they've brought in Pierre Gabriel from Saint-Etienne, both of whom are very young but are still capable of covering that right-back position with... I think what's probably thrown a spanner in this works is I think everybody assumed that Djibril Sidibe was leaving this summer. That's not materialised. So I don't know. I mean, we'll see. I fully expect him to go. I don't think Monaco will be wanting to let him go on a free. And I just think the signings that they have made recently indicate that, sadly, I mean, I'm a huge fan of Torres. I don't think he has a future at the club.
I think if I can just jump in there for a second, that Monaco have actually made a mistake by holding on to Sidibe for so long. I think he perhaps should have gone maybe last summer and allowed Toure to come in and play more regularly.
It's a strange situation, isn't it? I know that now we're thinking that Pierre Gabriel come into the club. You think that he might be the sort of replacement for one or the other, but you would have always thought that Sidibe would be the player to go in the end. On to more news in Liga, and I'll get your thoughts on this first, Rich, because obviously it's involving your club, Rennes, who are hunting players still, and they're attracting the eyes of Naim Sliti, who had a very good season last campaign. Would he be a great addition to that squad?
Yeah, I mean, Olivier Letang, the Rennes president, has made it very clear that he wants to increase the squad numbers. Obviously, they'll be playing in Europe this season, and he's adamant that they want to play their strongest in every competition they're in. European football is few and far between for Rennes, so they're gonna want to make as much of a go of it as possible, with obviously the hope that they can qualify again at the end of this season. And yeah, they want to look at boosting the squad. I mean, it's slightly unusual because you'd have expected a player of Naim Sliti's quality to come in and be an automatic starter. He had a great season for Dijon. He went to the World Cup. And he's attracted a lot of interest. So for him to come in and be challenging, therefore, pretty much almost anyway, on a direct basis with Ismaïla Sarr is slightly confusing. There obviously have been rumours that Sarr himself may be subject to some interest from much larger clubs, having shone briefly at the World Cup. Whether it's one eye on that, I hope not, because we've only seen probably sort of half a season really of Ismaïla Sarr with Rennes, really. But I think he's an excellent player. He's a dribbler, loves the ball at his feet, loves running at players. I still have queries over necessarily the quality of the end product, but certainly in terms of adding attacking threat, yeah, he's got that. So if it's to boost the squad as Letang has indicated, great. If it's with a half eye on, actually, what, we could lose Ismaïla Sarr this summer, then I'd perhaps be a little bit more disappointed. But I can't complain with quality being added to that Rennes team.
Robin, it seems like a good move potentially for club and player, really. We thought that Naim Sliti may be looking to move on from Dijon this summer, given that he had such an excellent campaign. And while it was a quieter World Cup than some might have expected, this person speaking specifically, putting him in our ones to watch, he didn't really quite shine as much as we thought he might do. But someone that could add to Rennes' push to the Europa League.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought he was one of the most underrated players in France last year. And as Rich hinted at, he's a great player to watch. He's obviously a very attacking and very exciting player. And, European football is really going to stretch this Rennes squad. As Rich said, they are a little bit light on numbers. The season starts in a matter of days, effectively. And it does seem that they do need additional bodies in there. And Sliti, he might only play half the matches, two-thirds of the matches, something like that. But if they were to get the kind of production that Dijon managed to get from him last year, I think they'd be quite happy with that. He's certainly a player who can perform in Ligue 1, and it would be interesting to see how he could do on a European side. It'll be interesting, additionally, just to see them increase their numbers in an attacking sense, because as I said, they do need that.
And it's going to be interesting to see if they can finally start being legitimate consistent contenders for that Europa League space and stop giving Rich so many heart attacks, really. On to our final bit of news in Ligue 1 tonight, and that's involving Nantes, who have a number of moves sort of in the pipelines as things look to be happening. And Robin, I know you spoke about this on your Twitter feed also earlier this week, that they look like not only are they going to poach Matt Miazga, who from Chelsea on loan when he was literally in the jaws, it seemed like, at Com, but also a move for Majid Waris, who is attracting other Ligue 1 clubs, a possible double move that may just about strengthen both areas of the pitch.
Yeah, that's right. Nantes are an interesting prospect this year because they've got a new coach in Miguel Cardoso, who wants to apparently play on a much more expansive style than either Fabio Conceição or Claudio Ranieri have. At the moment, given their personnel, that's going to be a bit complicated. So if they can get in a goal scorer like Majid Waris, that would be a major boost to them. Maizga is obviously a renowned defender, and he too would certainly make a difference in the rear guard. Although that's probably not a position that needs bolstered as much. It's going to be interesting to see what Nantes do in an attacking sense over the course of the next month, because they do need additional bodies there if they're going to play in the manner that Cardoso seems to want them to play in.
It's going to be a strange season for Nantes, really. It's another season of upheaval at managerial level, Rich. But these two moves, I know Waris has got Ligue 1 experience, but he's been in and out of the teams recently, at least, and maybe a questionable head on his shoulders sometimes. But Miazga, a young defender that's improving with every game. What do you think to the moves?
Waris makes more sense to me. They sorely lacked attacking threat and goals last season, and really got where they finished on the basis of a really strong defence. So they're going to want to play, as Robin suggested. The new coach is looking to play a more attractive style of football, and with that, then he's recognised that he needs to bring in more forwards. Waris, as you say, has Ligue 1 experience. At times, he's looked very, very effective. He had a short but almost hugely influential spell with Valenciennes a few years ago, and then joined Lorient and had relative success there. But as you say, he's very hot-headed. If things aren't going his way, he has it in him to be a little bit naughty, shall we say? But in terms of Miazga, I mean, I don't know if that defence needs a great deal adding to it. I mean, they obviously lost Leo Dubois, who moved over to Lyon in the summer. They brought in Fabio, who I would imagine will act as a direct replacement. The defence, I thought, looked solid last season. Nicolas Palwar aside, it's not a particularly aging defence. So I don't know. Maybe it's something to do with the US market. They've obviously got a little bit of history there with Bedoya having previously been at Nantes. That one I don't necessarily see making as much sense. But fresh young faces can't be too much of an issue. But yeah, I think Waris. He's got his issues, but again, get his head focused in the right place. He can be a pretty effective striker, which Nantes certainly need.
I don't think there's many not agreeing with you, Rich. Nantes definitely need some more firepower. On to things in Italy, and hopefully we can speak to Claudio again. Is your microphone a little bit better now, Claudio?
Hey guys, sorry, you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you maybe a bit muffled. We'll try our best to continue. So let's go back to those Napoli deals with Ochoa and Malqui. What can you tell us?
Yeah, so Ochoa is being brought in as a temporary replacement for Merit, the goalie that they signed from Udinese, very young, promising Italian goalie. But he broke his arm during the preseason training, so they are bringing in Ochoa now just as a temporary replacement. I expect Merritt to be the full-time starter later on in the season. And then Malkut Also, Napoli has Hisa at right back, who's done a great job for them. Husari really loved to utilize, especially on both sides of the flanks once Gulam went down. But Ancelotti might have different opinions of him. But I think they're just trying to strengthen their depth in all different areas of the field, because Ancelotti, he's not going to be focusing only on Serie A just like Sadi did last year. He's probably going to want to try to compete in as many competitions as possible. So I could see them making minor reinforcements here just to strengthen the squad overall.
It's going to be an interesting one, given that Napoli were so much contenders, but it was depth that was their worry last season. Claudio, is that their main focus for the rest of this transfer window, of keep as many as they can on board and really strengthen out that squad to fight on more fronts?
Yeah, absolutely. They wanted to keep Hamsik. He was close to moving to China, but then Ancelotti called him and kept him in the squad. He told them basically he would turn him into more of a regista than the box-to-box midfielder that he's been for Napoli all these years. And I guess that's a way of convincing him and prolonging his career a bit with Napoli. But, the only loss they've had so far is Jorginho to Chelsea, which Ancelotti was okay with because they have Diawara, a young midfielder there, ready to take his spot, and Ancelotti really believes in him. So their biggest concern, like you said, was depth last year. They've retained their stars except for Jorginho. The rest of the team is there, and they're probably going to make a couple of more minor changes like these just to add depth to the squad more than any flashing signing, except for Fabian Ruiz, who will probably be a starter for them, who was their big signing this offseason.
Yeah, there's going to be interesting to see if they can compete with all these other Serie A clubs making so many big moves. And another club that's making moves in the right direction, really, is Fiorentina, Claudio. They've made some little transfers that look like they're slowly progressing through for Piazza and Kevin Morales, which is all but confirmed earlier this evening, and the Piazza deal with a loans option to buy is reportedly a done deal from your guys at Di Marzio. What do you think to those moves? Do they push La Viola into more Europa League contenders? They were on the fringes last season, but a chance for them with the likes of Chiesa and others with these moves to push even further to that goal?
They're an interesting team. The owners are under a lot of pressure there. The fans do not like the owners. They protest often because Fiorentina has not really invested in the team over the past few years. They've made a lot of big sales like Bernardeschi to Juventus, but they really haven't spent the money to reinforce the squad. Last year, they put together a nice younger team who performed well after really the tragedy of Davide Astori. After he passed away, the team kind of came together and made a good run at the Europa League. They fell just short. But these moves, I like Piazza a lot. He showed very good signs at Juventus. Then he had a very serious injury, obviously, and spent last year on loan in Germany. So that's one move that it's a low risk, high reward type of move where if he performs well for them, the buyout will not be too much next year to keep him. So they're going to make moves like that, but it's not going to satisfy the fan base who are really looking for a star. But they have Federico Chiesa, and I think if they're able to hold on to him for the rest of the window, which seems to be the trend at the moment, the fans will be okay, and they should be a contender still for the Europa League next season.
And that's going to be one of their focuses, at least anyway, to try and get back in that Europa League with so many teams in that fight.
There's a lot, yeah. They're very Serie A is becoming very deep this year, which is a very good thing for the league.
Yeah, and one thing that's probably going to make them even deeper is this continuing rumor about Modric. Obviously, with Plan B going out the window with Vidal heading to Barcelona, reports tonight really that Luka Modric is asking Perez for a new challenge, and with Italy eagerly awaiting in the wings, potentially still trying to pull off their dream signing. Can it really happen?
It's very similar to the Ronaldo to Juventus situation. It started with the agents. Inter's talking to Modric's agent. Apparently, he has a meeting scheduled next week with Florentino Perez. to speak about his career at Real Madrid and maybe even ask to leave. He feels like he needs a new challenge. I'm not sure what's going on at Real Madrid that all these players want to leave. Ronaldo made a little more sense to me because he's a little older. He spent a lot of time there. He felt like the club wasn't really respecting him. But Modric seems like he had a great relationship with the club. But as far as the transfer itself, it's going to be a very difficult transfer. Juventus has a very healthy financial situation where Inter is just getting back to that level. Their finances are much better now. The Champions League obviously will help them, but it's going to be a big undertaking. But I think now they have to push to make this signing because they lost Vidal. Because the story was in Italy and to their fan base that Vidal was Plan B, and they had him on standby, ready to go. And now Barcelona swooped in for him. So if they don't sign Vidal or Modric, it's going to be very, very bad look for them to the fan base. So we'll see how it plays out. We should know more earlier next week as far as the reality of him joining Inter Milan.
And I'm sure that's when the excitement will really start to build. On to the final bit of news in Italy tonight. And it's a bit of a suggestion of one, sort of maybe a bit more of an Instagram rumor in these modern days. But Gonzalo Higuain is obviously chosen, reportedly, the number 9 jersey at AC Milan, which obviously is occupied by a player at the moment, Claudio, in Andre Silva. Does that put his future into question?
His future is definitely in question. I think right now the problem, not problem, but the situation at Milan is that a lot of the players on the team were purchased last year by the Chinese ownership and Fasone and Mirabelli. And now that they're all out, Leonardo is in and he's making decisions on the team. So it's really going to depend on his view of Andre Silva, if he believes that he could turn into a star player. He showed some flashes of it last year at Milan. He had a couple of weeks later on in the season, I believe against Chievo and Udinese, where he scored game-winning goals right at the end of the match to help Milan. He played well in the Europa League, but overall the season had to be a disappointment. They have to make some sales, especially in the striker department. Kalinic definitely seems like he's on his way out of the squad, and Andre Silva could follow. I think if Leonardo, he's trying to sign a midfielder. If he is able to identify one and make a solid signing, I could see Andre Silva sacrifice because they have to stay within the parameters of financial fair play. So I would give it a 50-50 shot of Andre Silva leaving Milan this season.
It's going to be interesting to see what they decide to do with all those striking options in the end. Thank you, Claudia. On to things in the Bundesliga, and we do have Ronan Murphy of Goal.com joining us, as well as obviously Axel Falk. Welcome to the show, Ronan.
Hi guys, how are things?
Very well, thank you. You're a little bit quiet if you can turn it up on your end, but I will go through the story I want to start off with yourself. We mentioned it briefly earlier with Axel, Ronan, and that's the deal for Arturo Vidal. We're understanding that a medical is going to be happening in the next couple of days at Barcelona, being snatched from the fingertips of Inter. An interesting move for the player, but we obviously want to focus on Bayern Munich. Is this the right move for the club to get him out, especially not just on a loan, but for a permanent move?
Yeah, I think Axel said it earlier that it's kind of the right deal to have at the moment because he only had 1 year left on his contract. So for Bayern to get the kind of 20 million plus that they're after receiving for him, it'll be good for them, and they'll be able to use it to reinforce elsewhere because they have an abundance of central midfielders, and it's a good idea to maybe move Vidal on. And like Axel was saying, Tolisso is the new man there. So if they're kind of looking forward to him to propel the midfield forward in the future, and they're after signing Leon Goretzka, obviously on a free transfer from Schalke, so they've plenty of depth there. So Vidal is kind of surplus to requirements at the moment, so it's a good move for all parties, really.
And I'm pretty sure the Chilean won't be too disappointed with heading to the at least. Let's go on to more news from the Bundesliga. And one of the prevailing stories for one of the big teams, Borussia Dortmund, has been the striker situation. They've come up short a number of times. They've not really looked getting anyone in, Ronan, at the moment. It was Mandzukic at one point, Batshuayi they wanted to possibly get back in at one point, but neither have sort of pulled off. It's now even signing that Maximilian Philip might start as a sort of shadow striker, which seemed strange for him. What's the current situation, and are they going to bring in someone before the deadline?
Yeah, the most recent rumour was Kevin Gamera on. He seems to want to go to Valencia now. So it seems that whoever they're being linked with doesn't really want to go to Dortmund, which isn't a great sign, despite them being a Champions League team. But I'd say we will see someone come in before the window closes, because even though Michael Zorc is after saying that he's not willing to spend on a striker just for the sake of it, they can't really go into the season just having Maximilian Philip and Isaac as a reserve, because neither of them are going to get you 20 goals a season in the Bundesliga, never mind European goals. And if anything happened to Philip, Isaac just hasn't performed at that level yet to kind of lead the line, and they'd end up maybe shifting Rice into the striker role, or Pulisic or something. So it wouldn't be a good idea not to sign a striker, but yeah, they're probably going to have to dip into the well of maybe someone to Favre work with in France or something, because the rumours for players elsewhere aren't really materialising. No one really wants to go, so unless he can get someone from Ligue 1, maybe Robin might have some insight there. But I think anyone who's played under him or he's played against has been linked recently, but there's nothing kind of strong at the moment, so it's panic stations for Dortmund really.
That's the interesting one, really, Axel, is that Ronan said it perfectly there by saying they're in panic stations, really, more than anything, because now everyone knows they want a striker. They have a limited amount of time to do it. Their options are fading. Are they going to get desperate?
It's not really like Dortmund style to get desperate when it comes to this. It seems to be Michael Zorc and Hans-Joachim Watzke's kind of way to relax and trust the material they have. I do think that Philip could score 20 goals a season next season at least, with Royce, Sancho and likes behind him. I do have not think that Alexander Isak could do that, but Maximilian Philip could become something. I mean, he's been tested in like a striker position, so I think it seems very Borussia Dortmund to trust a player like Maximilian Philip, a player that hasn't played there at all, basically, and who has been quite unproven. So it's very Borussia Dortmund to not get panicked, even though they should get panicked, I should say. I just trust Maximilian Philip.
It's going to be if the Yellow Wall can pull something off before the window, that might be just enough, especially with Bayern losing players. You never really know. Maybe a period of transition, we shall see. On to players that are interesting Premier League clubs now, Roman, and there's a couple on the list. Marvin Plattenhardt and Jetro Williams, the fullbacks, being the ones that have been linked most recently. What do you think to the two players and what they can offer the English Premier League if they were to join?
Well, I think from what we've heard from Hertha Berlin during the week that maybe Plattenhardt is going to leave. They kind of were indicating that it might be the best for all parties. So I could see that happening. But Jetro Willems, I'm not so sure whether he will move. I know he's been linked with Fulham today, but I'm not sure whether Eintracht will give up on him so easily after just signing him last season. He had a great start to life in the Bundesliga, but kind of trailed off in the second half of the season after the winter break. He was out of the team for a few games in a row, and he was on the bench and a few things like that. But I think he has the talent to succeed, and maybe they're probably not willing to give up on him just yet. But Marvin Plattenhardt, he played in the World Cup, so we know the kind of the level that he plays at. I suppose, although Germany weren't great in the World Cup, but he's a solid, consistent defender. He's not going to set the world alight. He's kind of going to end up as a mid-table Premier League player if he does move, but he'll be reliable, but not a lot more.
And Axel, what do you think? I mean, you would have seen plenty of Jetro Williams last season, especially Marvin Plattenhardt, obviously a German international, so they have got experience. Although both look like at least one of them's angling for a move away. Or would they be players that should interest Premier League clubs, or are they maybe a little bit far-fetched, given that Jetro Williams is maybe a little bit experienced, Marvin Plattenhardt obviously playing for some more of a mid-table club? What do you think?
I think Ron was quite spot on when it comes to Marvin Plattenhardt. He's a very good defender. He he's quite normal. He's got a great left foot, one of the best, one of his feet when it comes to like free kicks in Bundesliga. But more than that, he's basically just a good defender, and he would do well for most mid-table clubs in the Premier League, I'm sure. Jethro Williams is more uncertain, I would say. His best games for Eintracht Frankfurt were when Eintracht Frankfurt were on the front foot, when they were attacking. And Jethro Williams' defensive work rate and defensive qualities are more than questionable, I would say, which was the reason why Niko Kovac benched him in the second half of the season for right back and right-footed Timothy Chandler, who played left wing back for like basically half a season. So Williams is more uncertain, I would say, than Mount Platinum. Mount Platinum should be a target for many clubs in Europe who are aiming for like a solid left back. Jethro Williams less so. I think Jethro Williams would fit more as a left wing back or possibly even left midfielder, actually. But I do also think that Frankfurt are not too keen on selling Jethro Williams, because I think Alof Hütter, the new coach of Frankfurt, of course, seems to be quite keen on Jethro Williams and keen on keeping him. Keen on developing him into a very capable defender, which Alof Hütter seems to be very good in doing. So Mount Plattenat seems to be a very reasonable rumor. I think that could definitely happen and should possibly even happen. Just Williams less so.
Something to keep an eye on, at least anyway, for Premier League clubs, that two serviceable defenders at least. Anyway, on to our final bit of news in Germany tonight, and it's involving a man we've talked about a number of times on the show, but obviously not to yourself, Ronan. It's Axel Witsel. Obviously, he's been linked with Borussia Dortmund. We know about the release clause from his Chinese club, but a little bit of dragging their heels as such. Is there some kind of motion on this deal that seems to be stalling?
Yeah, it seems to be a kind of the Chinese club Tianjin Quanjin, if I'm pronouncing my Chinese clubs correctly. I might need to brush up on those. Maybe in FIFA 19, when they had the Chinese teams, I might be able to pronounce them a bit better from listening to the commentators say it. But I think they're the ones dragging their heels. They're not willing to sell them because it's not, the Chinese transfer window isn't open at the moment. So they're claiming that the 20 million release clause that he has just isn't. It's not applicable at the moment. So it seems that Witzel's lawyers, as well as Borussia Dortmund's lawyers, are trying to push a deal through at the moment, because both those parties want the deal to happen, but the Chinese club just don't want anything to happen at the moment.
And that's frustrating, really, as it can be, Axel. It seemed like every Chinese club wanted to poach everyone else's players a couple of years ago. Now the sort of roles have reversed with the issues with the government changing some of their tax rules, etc. But still a man that Dortmund would love to have in the midfield and add a bit more experience. But is that we talked about strikers obviously earlier, but is this as pressing a priority?
First of all, I think it's quite funny that Axel Witsel is basically being held hostage in China. And I think he could work extremely well at Dortmund. I think it should be a priority to sign a player of his type. I think he would fit extremely well into the team that I think Lucien Favre is trying to build. If you're looking at how he played at both Nice and at Mönchengladbach, he's often looking for that kind of a hectic and very pressing midfielder that Axel Witsel is. I think his play type, his playing style, and his leadership ability as well would fit Favre very, very well, as well as Borussia Dortmund's kind of style and identity as well. Because Borussia Dortmund, we must remember, is has been since Klopp took over, a very pressing side, and Favre likes that less so than Klopp, of course, but still, I think Witsel will fit into that team extremely well. And he's got a very, very nice first name as well.
Yeah, I thought you might think that, Axel. He also might help not just in shirt sales, but maybe some wig sales as well. But we'll wait and see if it does go through. That's all that we have time for this evening. My thanks to everyone who's joined us this evening. Thanks to Claudio, Robin, Rich, Ronan, and Axel. Full house this evening. And obviously, thank you for your company as well at home. Please do join us again next week for more from the crazy world that is the transfer window. Good night.